Okay, we're recording now. So, hi everyone. We're greeting you from Herron School of Art, and we're so happy to participate in this international festival at IUPUI. And me, I am a professor of Asian art history at Herron. I also chair international studies, and I'm here to speak with you about my work and my colleague's work, Stefan Petranik, who teaches in Fine Art Practice Department. So today we'll speak about only a small part of our activities, and we'll continue with different colleagues from here. Hi, Stefan.
Hi, Orna. How are you?
Good. So I'll move my slide, and Stefan, you were in Iceland just before pandemic. So tell us about your work in Iceland and how it affected your research and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so boy, we just skirted the pandemic. It was kind of we got back just in time back to the United States, but it was a wonderful week where we were coming to try to secure some of the initiatives that you were working on, Orna, to create more of a longstanding relationship with the University of Iceland
Mhm,
and Herron at IUPUI
mhm,
to foster faculty research, foster uh, globalization or internationalization of our curricula, which
mhm,
is a longstanding goal at Herron. So this is a new area for us that we don't have any strong alliances with. So I was there along with Gene Robertson and Craig McDaniel to meet with many of the stakeholders there
mhm,
and have conversations about possibilities moving forward for Herron and the University of Iceland. So we're able to see some of the wonderful sites in
mhm,
Iceland. There you can see one of the geysers on the Great Circle Tour.
mhm,
And then up there with all the people walking down that path, that's what tectonic plates between I think the Arctic and Europe.
mhm,
Technically, that is a plate, but we had the opportunity to visit with many Icelandic artists and see their work and discuss how they're thinking. And it made a big impression on me, especially certain artists like Ruri and Anna Lindahl, who have been working with this idea of climate
mhm,
change
mhm,
a lot because of how and where Iceland sits. It's at more of an extremity in the earth and in the sense of climate change. And so they've been feeling a lot of the effects of climate change for a longer period than some other places.
mhm,
So there's a real, I think, feeling that it's in the air, and it has real repercussions for their way of life, as well as their landscape. And I've been working on a project called The Future is Broken, which I was able to talk about there. That's a shot from the the Academy of Arts,
mhm,
and just talking about work that I've done in the United States. That's a photograph from the Western United States talking about snowpack recession rates and making relationships between the land and the actual physical experience of the land through the photography, and a lot of the data that is often invisible when we are out and about in those spaces, and trying to kind of make a relationship, visual one, but also a human one. How do we relate to climate change? It's one thing to talk about the data. It's another thing to talk to for us to experience the space. It's a complicated issue,
mhm.
and but very interesting and important. So had that opportunity to talk at length in two different in two different places at two different times. So I was really enjoying that. Um,
It's mostly video and photography, right?
Correct.
Mhm, mhm. And so you also visited some galleries you mentioned, right? Studios.
Yeah. Of course, Gene Robertson and Craig McDaniel have an important art history
Mhm,
publication they're on their, I think, sixth edition now.
mhm,
Um, and so it was a wonderful opportunity to visit with artists for them because they're always looking for new artists to represent and to understand how artists are engaging the world.
Mhm,
So we got to go to the I think it was the Sims building, the Iceland Academy of Arts,
mhm.
to talk with many artists in their studios with their spaces. And so you see this here in the slide. Um, Again, was important, wonderful opportunity for me just as an artist myself to engage
Mhm,
with artists in a different part of the world, with different cultural background and such a rich and interesting heritage. It's the Saga Island,
mhm,
and you know much more about it than I do, Orna, because you got to live there. But I'm really excited to continue to grow connections with the island and the I with in the Icelandic people because they're very friendly, and it's such an engaging landscape.
mhm, mhm.
I'm hoping in these times of the pandemic, everything is a little up in the air, and I probably would have been doing more on the development front than I have been, but I'm really excited to have more engagement. Some of the planned activities of having their faculty come to IUPUI and give talks and exhibitions have been on hold due to the pandemic. But
Yeah.
I'm sure we're going to be starting that up in the next several months here.
Mhm.
And I'm really excited about the possibilities of starting a studio, sorry, some type of um, study abroad program for our students that we can go and to experience Icelandic culture, their history, and their climate and their landscape because
Yeah.
it's quite amazing and distinct from America. And I think it would be very important for students to be able to visit this
Yeah.
country.
I specifically thought that this collaboration with School of Humanities will be important for us because Herron has your students work in multimedia, right, in video and photography and prints. And I think what Iceland offers us is this opportunity of very different landscape, as you mentioned. And so for multimedia work, this is, I think, a very interesting location to be and engage with global issues such as environment as your work does, right?
Absolutely. And they have such a strong connection to Europe
Mhm,
due to their location.
mhm,
And Europe has a very different perspective on a lot of not only political ideas, but ideas related to things like climate change than the United States does. And they're in a there's just a different headspace. And so
right.
that is a really compelling reason to have a relationship, with a place like Iceland. And the other thing that's really interesting about Iceland is how small, like, although geographically it's not a tiny place, it's a tiny population. Its population, right? It's smaller than the city of Indianapolis. The
Yeah.
whole country is smaller than our city. And so that creates a really interesting dynamic for students and people like me to think about how their worldview is distinct from ours. Um, yeah.
Did this travel and growing conversations about our partnership, how we're going to develop it? Of course, after the pandemic, things will change, and we hope to get back to normal schedules not too
Yeah.
far in the future, and then we will resume our conversations with our partners in Iceland. But how did this trip specifically impact your work? Were you able to somehow reflect on it when you're teaching, in your research, in any
Um,
exhibitions? I'm showing here the slide of your recent work, right?
Right. So this is a fresh off the press work, and it's called "Make the World Greta Again." And so this is part of the exhibition that's going on right now at Herron called the Sum of Unity,
Mhm.
which by its design was a group exhibition by that's curated by Samuel Levi Jones, who's a well-known alumna that um here in town, and or alumnus, I should say, sorry, but he brought the show together with the idea of signs of protest and talking about the current, not only changeover in political power in the United States and how like kind of difficult that has been, but also just about the where we are and the certain feeling of divisiveness and how that would be shown in a whole slew of people's perspectives about what they're really concerned about within our society. And so there's so many issues, but the issue for me right now that I'm focused on is impact to the environment and climate change and concern about the very large implications of that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I've been working on that. And so this piece is actually a photograph. It's in some ways it has a relationship to Iceland just because of the look of it. But what we have here is a photograph of a glacial lake, and there was a floating ice in the glacial lake that had calved off of the glacier, and I etched that away, subtracted it out of the photograph
Mhm.
using a laser, which is a form, is a form of energy, but it's also essentially burning away that ice. So
Mhm.
there's a relationship between there for me and climate change, and around this kind of image or the component of that within the image is Greta Thunberg's speech she gave to the UN during the Climate Action Summit in 2019, which was a pretty fiery speech um, and very pointedly putting the blame at leaders, international leaders around the world who are assembled there, that what they're doing is not sufficient to address the serious threat that climate change
Mhm.
creates. So, this falls in line with the trip that I got to take to Iceland. Um, I really hope to get to go back soon. Usually for me, although this photograph is not taken in Iceland, it's the sort of the imagery and the that it represents is closely aligned to it. And um, I don't think that's just a coincidence. I think the trip to Iceland, is a factor in this piece that I made, even though this photograph was technically taken at Glacier National Park in the United States during a recent sabbatical I had. So, it does take, as an artist, I find it takes some time to very directly work your experiences into uh, the the work that I make.
Mhm.
But there's no question in my mind that Iceland is already playing a role in just how I also am doing research about climate change. I do a lot of research just about the the scientific data that comes out,
Mhm. Mhm.
and I've been paying more attention to Iceland. And there were when I got to go, I was of course reading more about it, and out of sight, out of mind often is the saying because we get caught up with our own what's happening in our own backyard. And just some of the changes that Iceland has been facing because of climate change is really interesting and not necessarily expected.
Mhm.
Um, I remember there was a whole discussion about that I read for Iceland about it's difficult for their fishing fleets because some of their harbors
Mhm.
we talk all that their harbors are actually getting shallower, and
Mhm.
it's got to do with the runoff
Mhm.
from the melting ice and putting sediments into their harbors.
Mhm.
Um, but it seems counterintuitive because we what we hear a lot about is sea level rise. So you would think like their harbors might be getting deeper, but it's often more complex. So
Mhm.
so all these things I'm thinking about often, and it's really such a great. I'm really honored that I got to, humbled that I got to be a representative for IUPUI and Herron for the trip.
Yeah, we really hope to develop this communication. And as you mentioned, Stefan, we invited an art historian from Iceland to visit us to give us a talk about Icelandic artists. Just recently, we had a big work, sculptural work, near outside of our main library, right, which was by a sculptor from Iceland. And
Yes.
so our students were able to interact a little bit. Some people might still remember those figures, standing figures
Figures.
along the pathway from the library connecting to Herron. And it's just a new names that are coming out from Iceland also in art, such as Ragnar Kjartason, for instance, who showed in the Metropolitan Museum. And you are very familiar because he works also in multimedia and video very much, right?
And we, it was about maybe 3 years ago that we had one of his video-based pieces play here, right here at in the galleries at the Eskenazi Hall. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, and this work, I believe, which Jean and Craig are looking at, this was also another famous Icelandic artist who all participated in recently in Venus Biennale. And Craig and Jean, in their new edition of Themes of Contemporary Art, that famous book that was translated to so many languages and um, made IUPUI so much visible around the world, which is also used as a textbook in the University of Iceland, right? You mentioned about it.
Yep.
That book now has also some Icelandic artists. They connected their research about Iceland with this trip to Iceland. And not only they were able to meet with students who are reading and learning from their book, but also presented their new research. And you were able to connect your interest in environmental humanities in that trip as well.
Yeah, I know that they also included Ruri, who's has long-standing work as an artist and activist, dealing with many issues, but one of them is the concern for changes to the environment there in Iceland, and I know that they're planning on they've included that in in their most recent edition.
And I just want to, finish this section of my conversation is being locked down, living in lockdown and being sort of isolated in studios or in our homes. It's been very hard, but I'm calling this participation from here in International Festival as how to be creative during pandemic, because I'm just very much amazed, impressed by how many faculty and our students being so creative and so accomplishing during this time, including yourself, Stefan. Can you tell us a little bit more about this exhibition that you just mentioned that our alumnus has curated, but you see in my virtual background is the snapshot from that exhibition, correct?
Mhm.
How
Yes,
many
that's
works
right.
we have, and our students are exhibiting there as well too?
It was an open call for anybody in the community, as well as at Heron, students and faculty were encouraged to participate. I believe, I could be quietly wrong, but there's somewhere around 50 works in the exhibition, I believe.
Mhm.
There was some Shamir Wilson. Um, is participated. There's another local artist that was commissioned by Samuel Levi Jones to create a large text piece
Mhm.
on the wall opposing the one that's behind you.
Mhm.
But people were encouraged to think about this time of divisiveness, issues that they care about and want to essentially like inform kind of weeks protests, this idea of a sign of protest, a sign of kind of an activist artwork that seeks to directly engage the viewer in a topic or issue. And what's really nice is to see, although there's certainly threads and themes on that wall, there are a lot of different concerns listed, and I shouldn't say listed, but exposed through the artists. And there were some, I know there's couple graduate students that participated,
Yeah.
as well as a variety of faculty that,
Mhm.
and artists from the community
Mhm.
that participated. So it's called the Sum of Unity. I know it's up for, I don't know exact dates, but I think it's up at least a good amount into March.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful exhibition to come by and just kind of discover,
All right.
and it's very approachable, I think, and it's got there are a lot of issues there that are real close to the heart and on the surface, and so it's really, it's you can come in and get close and kind of think about what these artists are talking about, and at the same time kind of look at their craftsmanship and the way that they're going about presenting these ideas in a visual format.
Yeah. So yes, just like as Stefan mentioned, this exhibition is still ongoing at Herron Galleries. So please stop by, come to Herron, see our exhibition that showcases local artists, our faculty, some of our students, and in this uniting theme of speaking to our difficult times and uniting our voices and our concerns for brighter future. So thank you so much, Stefan, and we will continue. I'm just gonna, well, we're just very grateful to Stefan, and it was very interesting to hear about his work, specifically how environment and these global issues about environment having impact on his work and our about exhibition that is happening at Eskenazi Hall. Please welcome again to see that exhibition ongoing show with our faculty, but also creativity during pandemic times means teaching and virtual classrooms that connected between Herron and international classrooms overseas. So my colleagues, several of my colleagues at Herron have this virtual classrooms organized in collaboration with international faculty. And one of them is our professor of visual communication design, Yombok Hong, who will talk to us a little bit about her experience with a school in Mexico. Hi, Yombok.
Hi, Orna.
Welcome to International Festival. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right, so let me put the slide that you gave me, very beautiful slide with this globe. And tell us what you did with your classroom. You, Brian, and a professor in Mexico, right?
Dr. Pedro Damian. Yeah, he's the professor, architecture professor at, I hope I can pronounce their institutional name correctly. So Tecnológico de Monterrey. That's the name of the institution, and he is the professor teaching in the Department of Architecture. So let's say I've been working on the canal project like even before pandemic. So the project is about like how to intervene the people's behavior relating to riding a scooter on the canal. I don't know. Have you been to canal? Like, have you been to
Not
canal?
recently, yeah, not recently.
I know, yeah, it's unusual time.
Yeah.
So yes, like people sometimes just throw like the scooters in the what is that the water, the canal, or just like, vandalism that has been the issue. So the city wanted to explore what could be a creative way we can actually convene or intervene the people's like behaviors related to the issues. So I work on the project, and then we got pandemic. I have to figure out how to continue to work on this project. So last semester, in my online class, what was that? I need to look at it. I forgot the name of the course. Method for I think, hold on, framing problems. Yes, framing problem. I had opportunity to, explore some sort of like, the exchange experience with Professor Pedro. And Brian Richard, he's adjunct faculty member at Visual Communication Design. So the Pedro and Brian, they've known each other. And Brian, has known my project, and he thought it would be really nice to make some connection because, like, canal is a kind of environmental, or there's environmental elements. So I thought that's a great idea because specifically we're interested in tactical urbanism as a strategies to manage these issues. So last semester, um, uh, three of us, get together and then explore what other way we can actually, collaborate on these issues, exchanging student experiences. Mhm. Or no, I cannot hear you. You muted.
So here actually, it's a snapshot from your classroom, right? At the time of your class, I understand you, Brian, and Professor Pedro are talking during your combined class, right?
Yes, and I really wanted to point it out that images on your slide right now.
Mhm.
So that's a highway. I learned we can go to the Monterey. I forgot the name of the highway. Just take the highway. We are connected.
I
So
see.
that was really fascinating.
Orange one.
Huh?
It's right here, right?
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
And Dr. Pedro also studied at both the universities, so he knows really well about Indiana. So that was another interesting connection.
What was his class? So your class was on methods, and your class is in VCD. And what
Yeah.
was his class?
His class is undergrad architecture students, architecture class. So he had like 50 students, and they are all second year undergrad students.
Yeah, this see
Yes,
here.
yes.
So then your students are learning about what problem, what aspect, and his students are learning what aspect in this class.
Okay, so as I briefly mentioned, okay, so we continue this conversation, meaning last semester I offered a presentation. So Brian and I participate in their class, and then we provide some lectures and presentation in terms of how to strategize their communication to their clients. Because like other visual arts or design, their students outcome many times is like what should I say, involves the forms and intentions planning. So it was very important for them to know how to effectively communicating their design solution to the clients. So that was a specific point Brian and I was able to contribute, like sharing our knowledge and skills, informing students how to shape their communication part. And this semester, actually, we have a meeting this Friday with Pedro. So I'm teaching ideation method course. Starting from the week 9, we will work on this canal project again. So I am asking Pedro to teach our students what it means tactical urbanism and related to these issues. So we actually leveraging the disciplinary expertise each other to benefit our students. And I tried to figure out how to make our students meet together, but that was a bit challenging because my course is 100% online, asynchronous. So that part was been, hasn't been, yeah. So we actually thinking about recording our session and then sharing that recorded material with our students. That's the plan.
And then what kind of assignments then the students receive as final projects in this course?
My course or his course?
In both sides.
As far as I know, the Pedro's class was working on emergency housing issues. So his class is also focusing on community engagement elements. And my class is also like, canal is a public space. So how to, again, look at people's behavior involved in public space. So we have a shared perspective in terms of, like, pedagogical strategies, so shaping students' experience. It's not just reading the text. We really wanted to apply that community engagements in students' learning.
Very interesting. Yeah. And in terms of your, so besides this virtual classroom, I know your work is also very multimedia. You have a lot of projects working. Can you tell us a little bit more about your work during this pandemic times?
What do you mean?
Like in terms of your own other projects?
My other project?
Mhm.
Oh.
Your conversations, for instance, that you had at Yonsei University last summer.
Okay. Yeah, so if you're talking about specifically from international studies point of view, yes. Actually, I got an email from the professor Hyungyung. Forgot my last name. Sorry.
Yeah.
But they actually
I think her
got a
name.
grant from the Department of Education in Korea. So she was specifically interested in, like, having the exchanging kind of experience with our students. So yeah, so she shoot me email, and we're gonna have a further conversation about it.
Yeah, fantastic. So just like we talked with Stephanie about exchanges developing with Iceland, School of Humanities in Iceland, we're also initiating a conversation with design program at Yonsei University in South Korea, and Indiana University campus wide has agreement with Yonsei, and so Herron School of Design is art and design now starting conversation about partnership with design program in South Korea, and Yeonbok is was like spearheading that conversation.
Let's see what happened. But yeah, I've been very excited about all this conversation. I mean, as we all know, like, this is really like unpleasant and very tragic experience for all of us.
Yeah.
At the same time, this whole situation for us to, like, to be creative, how to make our students' learning experience enriched.
Yeah.
So I figured out, I mean, this is another really interesting environment we can leverage the technological aspect to be connected with the part of, with the other part of the institution.
Yeah. I'll just show another, just when you mentioned that how we're aiming to make this learning experience very creative, it's your virtual experience, virtual classroom, sharing it with another faculty is not the only one. I just want to share another experience with another faculty at Herron, Professor Jennifer Lee, who is not with us today, but her classroom also met with another art history classroom in University of Hamburg. And she had two events through IU gateways in Europe. She had a dialogue, art historical dialogue about medieval art based on her own research with a medievalist in the University of Hamburg. And her classroom had a virtual sort of class around one theme organized. So that's another experience right there.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyways,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Oh, no, you won't. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure, like, not make sure. I just wanted to add my comments, like, at the beginning, I was a bit nervous because, yes, I don't teach architecture. I never met them, and they are, they're not even like, the students attending the, the university here. So there are a lot of unknown factors, but it was so pleasant, like, to meet with them, how quickly we were able to converse each other because we had shared interest, what kind of information, exchange each other. At the same time, students, like, like, this is a global situation. So, like, Pedro's invitation, me and Brian, as a part of his course experience, are also excited. They're students. So yes, it was a very pleasant and interesting experience for us to be able to really quickly kind of share the experience together. So that was really interesting part.
And your students also had this perspective from architectural perspective, right?
Yes, that will happen this semester.
This will happen this semester.
So we're gonna have a planning meeting this Friday.
I see. Okay, great. And how in terms of language, they all were understanding English?
Oh yeah, they were so fluent in speaking English. So yeah, we didn't have any language barrier. Yeah. That was really another interesting part. Yeah, different generations, right?
Yeah. Very good. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Yambok. And I am going just to pause my, where is pausing? So now I will be very happy to introduce you to the international exhibition that is happening in France as we speak. This is by my colleague, Danielle Reedy. Her solo show is being shown in art gallery in Perpignan in France, and it's still ongoing. So let us hear her talking about this exhibition.
Exhibition is painting with air. Part of the idea behind that is that I'm really interested working as performance artists. So you'll see a little bit that what I'm talking about as I scroll through and talk about some things. Okay. So this is kind of funny. This is what I was talking about, the playfulness of the installation team. So all of these photos were actually taken by people who were doing, someone named Sébastien Noger. And he was one of the lighting people. And so essentially this show, my work has been widely collected in museums and by collectors in France, mostly after that exhibition. And so Sebastian was part of the group who drove around to pick up the works to prepare the show. And so it was really funny when I've been working with artist scraps since 2003 and just with trash in general from whatever communities I'm in since then. So it was really funny. He took this picture. This is from the exhibition catalog, and he decorated it with the trash that I was going to be using for the installation. And so I just thought it's just so interesting because really I think making art is part of being human. So I felt like everyone in the team there had an artistic eye, so it was cool to work with all of them. So I arrived with a little sketch, some thoughts beforehand. Sometimes I don't do that. And then I was confronted with this giant wall. Here I am, this is Lisa Bell. She usually wore a mask, but in this image she's not, but I'm wearing a mask. So I got into the space and I could see all these paintings everywhere, and I was hit with the sensation that, oh my goodness, I couldn't believe that actually I'd never seen so much of my own work in the same space, and I'd never seen so much of my work over so many time periods. So in some ways it was pretty emotional, and in some ways it almost felt like I hadn't even made all this work because so much time has passed. But the one you can see right here is actually from 2020. But this one, this one is called Yettis Universe. So I really like to think, I also like to think a lot about our universe and how we're just like ultimately so tiny and how we're connected to something that's so much larger than us. So here I am sharing some thoughts I had. And then I started. The way I start to the exhibitions, a lot of times I don't even have a sketch, but because I had to make 2 installations in less than a week, I thought I should be thinking before arriving. But I get both with the paintings and with the installations themselves, I just sort of sit calmly in this space. And then I end up coming up with a gesture. And then I use that gesture to create a form. And then that's how I arrive at the ultimate. Well, that's how it's basically all a process for me. So it starts with movement and then slowly builds into something greater. This is Andre getting to the exhibition. I thought, whoa, there's way too many paintings to be in one space, but he didn't think so. He wanted them all to be there. So this was also an important lesson too. He ended up doing just the idea of trusting the people you're working with. So I decided, I've known him for a very long time. And so I said, okay, I trust you. And I dove into the installation and he started changing things around. I hadn't set things up initially, but this is, just a pragmatic thing. The other woman was also a curator, so she had set them up differently. And I'd seen them the day before. So it was one of those situations where everybody realized that he was ultimately the curator and he did have a really beautiful vision. So, you get a sense of part of the space and me in the space. And essentially, it's kind of funny. I mean, painting with air too. Also, growing up, I was a dancer and a gymnast. And one of my favorite sensations was actually flying through the air into a soft pit of foam where you can never get hurt. It's like so joyful and wonderful. And I've been making art for a really long time. I'm 44 now. And it's really interesting how your relationship, some things stay the same in your relationship with your own artwork since you were little or since you were young and in college, and other things morph. So as I get older, I've gotten a little more lighthearted and a little less heavy, maybe. And so I've learned to embrace kind of joy and freedom to just express myself as I am without worry, which is wonderful. So they kept taking pictures of me while I was sort of moving around, figuring it out. So it looks like nothing. And sometimes it's really funny. People love watching me make these. So it feels kind of performative in a way. So I arrived with a giant suitcase full of trash from other artists. So this is what ends up going on the wall. And that's what Sebastian was playing with at the beginning with the camera. And now you can kind of see I start with blue tape. It's easy to take off, and so I start assembling, just looking at color, translucency, opacity, and I just start playing. So some of these materials that I've collected are really rough and not so beautiful to look at, and others seem really delicate. And so there's just this huge range of tiny sculptures ultimately that end up making this larger form on the wall. This is just an image of Andre comparing The color in the book to the color of a work that arrived. It's sweet to kind of watch other people too and how they react to your work.
So I would like to just finish today's video presentation with talking a little bit about next. I will be talking to a curator, professor of curatorial practices and director of museum studies at IUPUI, Laura Holtzman. She curated this ongoing virtual exhibition, Creativity versus COVID, Ending the Pandemic for Good, with international collective of students, artists, and access to medicines advocates. So Laura will speak to us a little bit more about this ongoing project. Part of it will be in person, and she's bringing part of this project into Herron Galleries in March with her students. But it is a very large virtual platform that she has developed with her group of her collaborators. Not only am I a scholar of Asian art, but also I'm a curator of Asian art. And I will end today's presentation with my own virtual exhibition project, where I'm just participating in this big project, which is organized by a group of anthropology scholars in Central Asia and in Europe. So some of them are, it's really international project. Some of collaborators are from Poland, Switzerland, and Germany, and then Central Asian artists and curators. And so in that big virtual exhibition, which is still forming, I have a small corner, so to speak, with 3 Mongolian artists, and you see all 3 artists here. And the project is called Asphalt, Lines and Lives, and it aims to investigate the growing impact of urbanization in the cultures such as Mongolia and Central Asia, Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan, where the original cultures were really based on steppe economy, and people lived in as pastoral nomads in steppe. And people in steppe, like this performance artist, is exploring the rough roads made by modern cars, and then steppes without any cars and any roads. And then we have a third artist whose art is developed based on road signs. And anthropologists are interrogating the impact of urbanization on the steppe economy and culture at large, how the Central Asian people are changing their ways of perception and life and also culture through the lens of asphalt and lines. So thank you, and I hope to contribute another Herron project about Laura Holtzman's virtual exhibition on Wednesday, but thank you for staying with us, and we will hope to see you all in Herron Galleries, or otherwise meet your students and other colleagues at IUPUI. Bye-bye for now.